nice to meet them on a one-on-one basis, you know. I never respected them much when they were beating the crap out of my Canadians.
Yeah, but look at us now. Look at he comes beside us, and I'm standing beside him, and we're small, and look at how big we are nowadays. There's a big difference.
There's no point to go up there, though.
It's great.
Whether it be hard work on the ice or hard times on the golf course, the Philadelphia Flyers have bullied their way into the hearts of many. This fall marks a silver season for hockey in Philadelphia. In 1967, the NHL expanded from 6 to 12 teams. A generation later, what started as a novel idea in Philadelphia has grown into a lasting relationship between a team and the city. Aside from the Flyers growing with the fans, they themselves have grown as a family, enjoying the highest of highs and enduring the lowest of lows. In this silver season, they celebrate. And in this next hour, we examine. We look back at the early days, which led to the glory days, and now to the current cast, and the challenge that lies ahead, recapturing playoff success. A silver celebration.
The name, we had a contest, and various people suggested various names, and we took the top 20, looked at them, and talked about them, and actually it was my sister who was very strongly in favor of Flyers, and she kept hammering home Philadelphia Flyers, and it just sounded right, and we said that's what we're going to go with. Trying to find investors and partners in the team, and no one had ever heard of hockey or understood the game, and felt that it couldn't possibly succeed in Philadelphia. I got a little bit nervous.
Bud Poyle, we both came from the Western Hockey League, and I moved my family out here in lock, stock, and barrel, and not knowing what type of success we had.
And I remember the first year, many days we had 4,000 or 5,000 people here in Philadelphia. So we needed the support of the organization, you know, to keep going.
I remember my first impressions of Philadelphia were coming over the Penrose Avenue Bridge, and this bus driver picked us up at the airport. We come over the bridge, on the right-hand side, you see this bloody machine there grinding all these cars up. And I asked the bus driver, I said, what the hell kind of machine is that? And he says, oh, that machine is grinding up the body parts. I said, what do you mean body parts? He said, well, there's car parts as well as human bodies. I said, really? He said, God, those were my first impressions of Philadelphia.
It is October 1967. First impressions aside, personal fears forgotten. A small group of young Canadian men make history in a city far to the south, Philadelphia. It took a man with great vision to bring NHL hockey to the corner of Broad and Patterson.
I had been asked by the owner of the basketball team if my partner and I would consider getting involved in building an arena for the basketball team. And when I learned that the National Hockey League was expanding, I thought it would be a perfect addition to the total project. Plus, I had seen a couple of hockey games and felt it was the greatest sport I had ever seen. So I was very enthused about the possibility of acquiring a new franchise in the National Hockey League and building an arena in the fourth largest city in the country, which at the time really had no first-class arena of any kind. Of the 6 expansion clubs of that era, we were the most successful. And we were probably voted by, I think there was a sports writers poll or something about, of those 6 teams coming in 1967, which would be the most successful, which would be the least successful. Philadelphia was last on everybody's list, so it was a surprise. And I think we just came in at the right time in the right place with the right people. and it worked out for us.
We didn't have a very good skating club, and we were very defensive-minded. I mean, we had two good young goalies, and Bernie and Dougie Favell, and we played a very defensive style. If we get 2 goals, we generally got to tie or win because we stress the defense an awful lot. Like when I was a kid, the only time we were over center ice if we had a breakaway. And we played an awful lot of the time on our own end, and we became pretty proficient in it. And I believe that we had a record that if we ever scored first, we never lost a game. I mean, we may have been tied, but we never lost. And we played very well defensively. That was our forte.
In that first season, the Flyers' defensive approach propelled them to first place in the newly formed Western Division and a playoff berth. But it did not come easy. Little fan support prompted financial questions and difficult times to come.
One of the biggest things was when we lost the part of our roof of the spectrum, and of course we were like vagabonds traveling all over the country playing our last 20-some games on the road, and we played a game in New York, Boston, we played a game in Toronto, we played 3 or 4 games in Quebec, and it was very difficult. It was difficult for the guys who were married and had young children because we weren't home that often. It was good for me because I wasn't married, and so being on the road you save a lot of money, get the meal money, but there was no continuity in the team the first couple of years. The reason being is it was a very unsettling situation. I think that Mr. Snider didn't know if he was going to have enough money to pay the players. We weren't drawing a lot of fans. It was very difficult on everybody.
I remember the fear I had when we played in Montreal, for an example. Montreal had such a great team. They always had great teams, but it seems like, you're talking 67, 68, they had a fantastic team. And you knew, I knew as a goaltender that there's no question in my mind I had to play well, in that game, because they were so much better than we were. But at the same time, we had a good team, good defensive team. That's the only way we could play those, the teams like Montreal. But as a goalie, it was scary at times.
There were many anxious moments at Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens as well. 3 years into the Philadelphia experiment, Flyers hockey crashed to an all-time low of 17 wins in a single season. The 69-70 campaign became the Flyers' first non-playoff year. New general manager Keith Allen did not panic. Futility would turn to fortune, he thought, so long as he did not deviate from the master plan.
Well, right from the start, we felt that we were not going to make any moves that would jeopardize our future. So we didn't trade many draft choices away, and I think the only one that I can recall that we traded at that point in time was first-round draft choice that when Bud was here, Bud Poyle, that he sent to Boston for reserve Paymont.
Keith, the obstacles he had to overcome was the fact that in the first 2 years, for example, we didn't even have a draft in the NHL. Most of the players were owned by the 6 original teams, and they had all kinds of rules and regulations when they admitted us that the drafts were really of the leftovers. And the real first universal draft was in the 3rd season, and that was the year we drafted Bobby Clarke. And after that, the obstacles became less formidable because Bob Clarke really led us out of the wilderness and was the leader of our team and going forward.
When Freddie put that on the board, it was before the game that we beat the Bruins to win the Stanley Cup, and he was right. I mean, that group of guys are still close.
Count 3, 2, 1, I guess, ladies and gentlemen, the Flyers are going to win the Stanley Cup, and I think I said it with a kind of incredulous voice that really depicted how I feel. It's really the Stanley Cup. Brilliant. Can you imagine the euphoria? 7 years in, you beat the Bruins 4 times, or Esposito, Harding, one of the great teams of all time. It's a miracle. And then you just savored it there, and you, some of the recollections that you had, you hoped when you had gotten the job that you would have been around long enough that they win something. And here they won the whole thing.
In 1979, when I was playing for Toronto, Dave Keeling told me at the time, he said, if you're fortunate enough to win a Stanley Cup, he said, you'll never forget that year. The city will go crazy. And but I couldn't relate to that, at the time. But when we won, I could see what he was talking about. It was just incredible. I remember the surprise for all the players in that team who would go to restaurants and people would give us a standing ovation, which was incredible. And the best part is people would pick up the tab too. So that was nice. But it was just the whole city, the whole city. When I look back at that year, those 2 years, the whole city was one big party.
It was often said that only the Lord saves more than Bernie Perrant. But Philadelphia had another savior, Bob Clarke. As a rookie back in '69, the 20-year-old Clarke carried suitcases for veterans like Wayne Hillman. 5 years later, he was carrying the entire franchise on his back and the Stanley Cup in his arms.
The championship team, 73-74, I think had what probably every championship team must have, and that was a real closeness amongst its players. Our players liked each other. We spent our whole winter together. We worked for each other. We cared about each other. And I think when you can get a whole group of men on a sports team doing that, then you have a very good chance of winning. And obviously we won.
Forward check by Clarke. So Schultz breaks it up. Schultz behind the net. Centers. Flat. Tries to Clarke. Shot! Rebound!
The overtime goal I scored against the Bruins, I guess, became very important because we ended up winning the Stanley Cup. Had we not won the Stanley Cup, then naturally that goal wouldn't have been nearly as important. I think it was important in the development of our club because had we lost 2 games to the Bruins, we would have had a tough time coming back, I think.
Bob Clarke was no doubt the leader of the Cup champion Flyers. But there was another force behind the men that twice sipped from Lord Stanley's Cup. Coach Fred Shero.
Freddie, of course, was the right man for that team, and he just let them develop their own skills, but fine-tuned them on the ice there, and they all loved him until the day he died.
You could have been a teenager, middle 20s, late 30s, late 50s, it didn't matter. He treated you like an adult. He treated you like a man, treated you with respect till you proved him different. And if you proved him different, you deserved every bit of whatever treatment you got.
Shero was a unique man. He had a way of uniting guys in a common cause and making you feel good about yourself and playing hard, and for a man who was basically seemed gentle and kind, his teams were very ferocious teams, and he never advocated that, and I don't know why we played that way so much, but he had a way of making you win, and I don't know how he did it, but I think that all of us who played for Freddie owe him a lot, and we all still relate to things he's done and taught us, and there's things he did and things he taught us, and I guess a lot of us loved the man.
Love was something Shiloh's Flyers expressed for one another. But there was no love lost between the Flyers and the rest of the league. The Broad Street Bullies was their name, and rough, tough hockey was their game.
Other players, perhaps our team in general, use it to our advantage in certain situations. That isn't why we won. You know, we won through discipline and hard work and the leadership and the people that we had, and we were an aggressive team. We didn't take anything from anybody, and any team that wins the cup is going to have that type of a team. Everything has to come together, and we had everything that was needed to win a championship.
They did win, and as their late mentor suggested, they still walk together. Recently, many gathered at a golf outing to celebrate the club's 25th anniversary, just one of many functions involving the Flyers alumni.
We're probably the strongest alumni association. I shouldn't say the strongest, but we're one of the strongest alumni associations in the National Hockey League. We have for 20-some players in Philadelphia that participate in sports, whether it's hockey or softball. So we do a lot of charity work, and I think that's one of the reasons the Philadelphia Flyers Alumni Association is very accepted and very well known in the Philadelphia area, because we do lots of charity. And but it all has to come together, and it was all brought together, I think, by Coach Schill.
Probably the most nervous day of my life. I remember I had this kind of a turquoise blue shirt on, and by the time I was done with the press, it was dark blue. And my sport coat that I had was also wet, so they both went in the trash when I got home.
Been and still are a method of communication between a coach and his players. Fred Shiro was the master of motivation. Paul Holmgren continues this tradition today. Hundreds of players have walked through this locker room door to proudly, honorably wear the emblem of the orange and black, a symbol of commitment, dedication, and sacrifice, the essence of a Philadelphia Flyer.
I learned that early in my career with the Flyers, based on what Bobby Clarke did, and what Bob Kelly did, and what Gary Dornhofer did, and Bernie Perrant, and I can go on and name lots of great players that have played in a Flyer uniform.
When you put on that sweater, that jersey, that you have pride and that you're going to give it everything you have, and you're going to work as hard as you possibly can. That's what our fans love. They'll go along with the team if the team is working. They have no patience with non-workers or floaters or what have you. If the team's working and trying hard and giving it everything they have, our fans will support us.
It is the work ethic that is the foundation of the Flyers franchise, the inner realization that no one foe can or shall succeed. The struggle to be the best you can be, and then a little more. The product, a winner.
I remember talking to other GMs around the league when we were just coming on, and they were almost unanimously saying that you guys just don't work everybody. You want the puck more, you just go to the corners harder. And we got that reputation, and of course Clarke was a workaholic, as you know, and I think he led the troops and became captain, of course, after 2 or 3 years in the league. So it was just something that developed, and then we kept with it. And I think we really tried to get players that were character players. I mean, at the expense sometimes of a little skill. But we knew that these guys would give give it to all and pay the price to win and work to do it and so forth. So it was simple as that. They just seemed to develop and carry on, and I think that it was a large measure for our success.
You got to be willing to sacrifice your body, and what I mean by sacrificing your body is taking a lot of hits for the team, blocking shots, doing anything you possibly can to win, and we had the type of players that were that type because we were in a talented group of athletes. And the only way we're going to be successful is outwork the opposition. And I think that today's game is a more finesse game, and I don't feel that the players in the game today, not only in Philadelphia, but a lot are willing to dedicate themselves to the game as much as we were. And really, one of the reasons is probably because of the almighty dollar. I think they're making so damn much more money than we were. Hell, I remember my last 4 years as a professional, I made a little over $100,000 a year. I was proud of that. I remember my first game, my first year in the National Hockey League was 1966 with Boston. I made $7,500. And it takes total dedication. I don't think we have that dedication in the game today, not only in Philadelphia, but a lot of other teams too.
The work ethic may or may not be what it once was, but in recent seasons, results have slipped. Past and present, the Flyers realize a need to recapture Spectrum's success.
You know, the biggest thing is don't too much of that. You've got to get the respect back on the man. Yeah, I know. Somebody gave you a horn, Yeah. I remember when I first played here, I know. Automatic.
I agree with what you said, and I mean, it comes to a point where I think I've been in the league 8 years. I know my first 5 years, maybe touch on this in the 6 years, that you come to Spectrum, teams were, I think we had the intangible, and that was the physical intimidation, or just knowing that we were going to work this team, and if they were going to win, it was going to be, these guys were going to have some bruises on them, and it was going to be a hard-fought win. And I think that last couple of years we let it slip, and it seems like obviously you didn't look at our home record that it hasn't been that great, and I just think we've lost that edge, and we have to get that somehow back, that Spectrum edge, which was so important years past.
What does the orange and black, what does the Flyer logo mean to Rick Tocchet?
Well, for years it's a sacrifice, individual goals for the team, and I think I remember every time since I was a rookie that it really didn't matter who scored the goals or who got the goal. It just seemed like we were a unit, and if you had to play the Flyers, you had to beat us as a unit. It wasn't really one individual guy that that you always had to look for. It was like, geez, they're coming at you at waves. I think just sacrificing. I know a lot of guys over years have sacrificed a lot of their personal goals for the team, and I think that maybe we're going to have to get back to that sort of philosophy, because that's what made the Flyers so successful.
It's always meant a lot to me from day one to play for the Flyers. I think it's certainly, in my opinion, probably the elite franchise in professional hockey. And certainly I would say it ranks up there with the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Yankees, franchises like that go way back. But I think the Flyers, though it's only 25 years old, I think is one of the more prestigious and probably one of the franchises that people have the most pride in playing for. You know, you can feel the tradition when you walk into the Spectrum, and fans are loud, and there's a lot of noise, and you hear a lot about the older players that used to play, and you just try and play the best you can to, one day maybe people talk about, the teams that we play on like that. And I think a lot of the players just want to keep the tradition up, and, we haven't done very well. I guess we didn't do very well last year or the year before, but, I think we're really looking forward to this year, and I think, a lot of guys are really looking forward to putting the uniform on, especially, and, making the playoffs.
I know the first year when we ended up with a 500 record, we did well in the playoffs, but we ended up with a 500 record, and I think that was the first time the Flyers had not had a winning season in 17 or something like that. And I had an inner feeling of, it was my first year there, and being a bit ashamed of letting down the guys who had played 17 years and had that winning tradition. And I'm sure the other guys feel that way, that for 17 years these guys have built us up, and now we've kind of let it down for a couple of years, but it doesn't take long to get it back either. A return to prominence might be just a few pointers away. It's been 18 years since Jim Watson and his teammates won the Stanley Cup. Time has not faded the memories. Jim Watson is not a coach. He is the personification of a winner, a man possessed by the ethic, willing to impart his experience upon those who yearn to win.
And the kids today are much bigger and stronger than we were when we were coming through. The athlete in general is, and it's no different with hockey players. I mean, they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. I found them to be very pleasant. They had a hard work ethic. They impressed me on a whole. All I could say to them is, look at, you only go around once. You only have this opportunity once. Your career does not last that long. Don't waste your time. Give everything you have. Because even if you don't do it, even if you don't make it, and you've got to be able to sit down afterwards, look yourself in the mirror, or sit down when you sit down with your family and have dinner, or you lay down in the bed at night, you want to feel good about yourself. You want to feel that, listen, I've done everything I can. And if it wasn't enough, so be it, but at least I've tried. And, 9 times out of 10, if you've done your best, you're going to get some significant rewards at the end.
I love those pants. Why? They're easy to get on, they're comfortable, and I hope they look good. Yeah? I was mad that they made the rule change. It disallowed wearing them.
Our practice rink nowadays will have to be just that, quick. Speed is now the name of the game.
There's some teams that build everything they do on speed. There's some teams that grind it out, but I don't think you have a chance to win or compete in a way without being able to play to match speed a little bit. People are getting the men are getting stronger and bigger, but they also can skate faster. And if you don't keep up, you're not going to compete. That's the way the game is. I don't think it's anything where we sat down and said, we're going to change our style. We're not going to play different. We're going to play like Edmonton played 3 years ago. We're not going to play like the Flyers. We want to be tough. We want to be strong in the rink. We want to compete. We don't plan to go into places where we're afraid physically or anything like that. But we have to be able to compete skating-wise, and that's just the way the game is, and I think you have to face that.
The success of quickness in Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, and Pittsburgh has the grinding, plodding teams reconsidering their approach. But finding the talent accustomed to fast finesse hockey is a potential problem. Local resources are tapped out. Throughout the 80s, Europeans met with only a modicum of success in the NHL. Not until the amateur draft of 1989 did the European player back the NHL spotlight. Matt Sundin of the Quebec Nordiques was the first to go there, and the first non-North American selected that hat. A monumental breakthrough it was, and ever since, the Finns, Czechs, and Soviets have followed the Swedes to satisfy the needs of the changing NHL game.
They consider the are picking up some Europeans, and that's what the Europeans are known for. They're skating and skills-wise, and most of the team has a European in their team right now, more than it was before, and we will expand a little bit more. Some Europeans, other Russians, more about
some teams have problems with them too, and they may have to follow the right Russians to your team.
But want to play and really interesting to come, and just not for the money and all that. So I think it's going to grow maybe a little bit more from the European side. I don't think it's a big thing that we've gone into more Europeans. I think anyone who watches the news through the month of August and saw what happened there, the world's different, and it changed dramatically last year, and it just has continued to change, and just a matter of keeping up. We basically look at it as a player pool, and we're scouting the best players and finding the best players, and certainly I don't think you want to gamble all any more than you want to have all U.S. college players or all Canadian players or all Soviets. I mean, that's not a good idea, I don't think, but I do think you want to pick the best players, and I think they're going to be available to us. So what we're trying to do is just scout the player pool as good as we can, be aware of the necessity to have a mixture
so that no one area becomes dominant or anything on your team, but I think you want to have the best guys, and that's what we've tried to do.
What about Stoyanov?
That's Alex Stoyanov, Russ Farwell is inquiring about. A 6'4", 220-pound right winger from Hamilton of the Ontario League. Good size, good shot, decent numbers. And he figures to still be on the board when the Flyers draft 6th. In their pre-draft meetings, the names of many young men are bandied about. Certainly, Eric Lindros will go first. But who will remain? Forsberg, Peter, 6 feet, 174 pounds, a center, a Swede. Before the day is over, Russ and his scouts will interview him. A candidate, yes. A likely one? Not if past drafts are any indication. The Flyers have never selected a European in the first round. Draft day arrives. Alex Stoyanov is there with his family for support. The Winnipeg Jets select before the Flyers. Aaron Ward, a defenseman from the University of Michigan, is available no longer. The Flyers claim is next. Stoyanov waits.
Philadelphia Flyers are pleased to select from Modo, Sweden, Peter Forsberg.
It was the first surprise of the first round. Forsberg to Philadelphia. The scouting report describes him as a playmaker, goal scorer, effective checker, smooth skater. In this time of barriers coming down, the Flyers have broken one of their own.
We very, very clearly felt he was the best player at that time, and we tried very hard to talk ourselves out of it. You know, I went through, and he was this, he was that, he was European, but we had a number of our best people go through Europe all at different times, some at different tournaments, and felt very strong he was the best player. There was a time where we had him right behind Lindros, and so I don't think that we, it just came down that we clearly felt he was, and he also was the kind of guy that this team needs. We need that creative, offensive guy as much as any need we could have. That's the kind of player we need. Here was the guy we felt clearly to be the best, and what are we going to do? And I think it would have been a mistake not to pick the guy we felt was the best player. So 2 or 3 years from now is the only way we can judge that, and we'll have to see as he matures and see what kind of a player we have. But our guys were very confident that's where we had him rated, and that's the way we went.
As a rookie, I remember coming in the Spectrum and looking at all those banners and winning the Stanley Cup. You always have that in your mind, boy, it'd be a great place to come and play.
Legs like pistons, churning, accelerating, cutting, swerving, driven. Transition defense to offense. Speed, a weapon. A weapon the Flyers have struggled without in recent Markel injury-plagued seasons. Speed, a weapon possessed by defenseman Steve Duchesne.
My kind of game is to go up in the play and try to score goals, and I'll try to do as best as I can, and hopefully knock on wood and be healthy and not have a problem to get hurt. It's great because when I first came up here, they told me my role was to go up and try to score goals, try to create some chances to hopefully score goals, and it's fun. As long as I know what I have to do, what my role is, it's a lot easier.
He's averaged 20 goals over the last 3 years, and that's the kind of defenseman we haven't had in our lineup.
That's really going to be a big part of our game this year. Is Steve Duchesne jumping up, and I think he's going to have a hell of a year with us.
Steve Duchesne's a great defenseman, and he's really going to help our power play and moving the puck out of our zone pretty quick.
What I've admired and what I think the fans in Philadelphia will admire about him is he loves to play a rough physical game as well. A physical player with the ability to score. An exciting combination. The Flyers greet Steve Duchesne with open arms. But how does Steve Duchesne greet Philadelphia?
Like when they told me I was going to get traded, I didn't even hear where I was going. I just you got traded, and I was so upset I couldn't believe it. And
like when I talked to the people in Philadelphia, it probably sounded like I didn't want to come to Philadelphia, but that was untrue. It was just that I was very upset to get traded from California. I was there for 5 years, and I didn't have anything against Philadelphia. And when I came here for the press conference, everybody treated me so well, so great. Everything was first class, and that it made it a lot easier for me to adjust from being traded. But it's hard. It was the first time in my life, even from junior or professional, that you get traded. So you got a lot of friends, you got a house, and stuff like that. So it was hard. But hey, it's part of the game, I guess. And they always tell you have to prepare yourself for it, but it's not easy. Oh my God. See, that's Los Angeles. We're always in the beach, so. Steve Duchesne's hockey life in Philadelphia does not figure to be a day at the beach. In L.A., he had teammates named Gretzky and Robitaille, making it easy to get lost in the shuffle both on and off the ice. In Philadelphia, he won't be afforded such luxuries. Here I can see that there's probably going to be a lot more pressure than it was in Los Angeles. I have to be there every night, and there's something in Los Angeles. If one night you're kind of taken off, playing as well, you won't hear too much about it. But I would imagine here in Philadelphia, it'll probably be different. I'll try to be as regular as possible, play as well as every game. There's 80 games, a long season. I'll try to do as good as I can, but it's something that I'm sure I'll have pressure. I'll have probably someone reminding me of this, and you got to try to go up a little bit more, try to do this and that. But it's a part of my game. Any hockey assessment of Steve Duchesne comes full circle. It starts with speed, it ends with speed. Fortunately for the Flyers, he is now an ally. Having been a Smythe Division foe for 5 seasons with the Kings, Steve admits that skating was the #1 way to attack the orange and black. Definitely. There's something in the game plan that we have to use our speed. I think what they were doing was trying to hack too much and play the body too much. And our game plan, I remember, was to try to use as much speed as possible. Go and use that defense. We didn't think that defense was quick. So all we wanted to do is probably use our speed. So it's something you have to do. I think that the league right now, the aspect of the game right now, everything is changing towards speed. And if you look at Pittsburgh last year, they made a pretty good trade to go get some speed, and they won the cup. It's something that you definitely have to do. And by acquiring me, they definitely got a little bit more speed. I think we still need to do some change and get some more speed up front. We're not that far. I don't think the Flyers are that far from winning the cup again. It's so tight in this division. All you have to do is make the playoff first of all, and from there, you never know. From your standpoint, summer's been a little bit too long the past 2 years? Yeah, it has. Whenever my handicap starts to come down, I know the summer's been too long. I like golf, but not 5 months of it. How much longer do you think you might be playing an extra 2 months of golf? You can't afford much longer. Yeah, well, it's not going to be this year. I think our goal is to make the playoffs. We got a good team. I think Russ has added some speed, and I'm excited about it. And if we don't make the playoffs this year, it's going to be a great disappointment. Making the playoffs, it is the biggest challenge facing the Flyers. An organization accustomed to playoff success has been sent packing the last 2 seasons uninvited to Lord Stanley's silver party. The failures of recent springs have been deemed unacceptable in Philadelphia. And so, the wind of change has blown through the Flyer locker room.
You get mixed feelings when you lose your friends and stuff, but, it's a business, and, when you add guys like Duchesne and Brind'Amour and Dan Quinn can play, Dave Brown's a great guy in the dressing room. Casper won a Selkie. I mean, you're adding positives, and it's just too bad we couldn't keep the same guys that we got rid of before, because I'm a fan of those guys. Melody, Brewery, Ronnie Sutter, so I mean, it's just a transition game right now, and we've added a lot of speed. The transition game to where it's at now, and these guys are going to add a lot of that for us.
The addition Rick Tocchet speaks of is scoring, the Flyers' biggest need. With only he and Pelle Eklund considered threats last season, it was easy for opponents to defense the offense.
It was really frustrating for me the last couple months here, because I felt a lot of teams were keen on me, especially in the division. And, I was getting hit more than I usually get hit, and it's tough because you can't retaliate, and sometimes you can't find open ice. And Pelle Eklund is starting to get a little tired at the end of the league, because a lot of teams are keen on him. So it's going to be nice to know that we have other weapons, and I'm a fan of Brind'Amour. I remember his rookie year. I really liked him. He's a strong kid. He works the corners, and he's going to work perfect in our type of system.
Rod Brind'Amour comes to the Flyers one season removed from a rookie campaign that produced 26 goals and 61 points.
He's very strong and physically strong, and he's a good skater, and he can score. I can see him being a regular 30 to 35 goal scorer in this league. So if he can do that and play, he's a good solid two-way player, and he can play physical. So he's going to be a great player.
Dan Quinn is the other half of the trade from St. Louis that sent Ron Sutter and Murray Barron to the Blues. The Flyers are Quinn's third team in less than a year. The hope is that Quinn, who averages nearly a point per game, can find a home in Philadelphia.
I think you kind of got to go Robinson. Once he's only there for 20 games the regular season in the playoffs, and great offensive player, great moves, and he can do nothing but help this team.
Two of the less talked about but not less important acquisitions are forwards Brad Jones and Steve Casper. Casper projects to replace Ron Sutter in his defensive center role, but can also skate and score when called upon.
I played with him most of last year. He's a real hard-working player. He's really strong defensively, great on face-offs, great penalty killer, and he comes to play every night, and he's going to add a great deal of enthusiasm, and his hard work ethic is going to really rub off on everybody else.
Jones, like another LA offseason acquisition, Steve Duchesne, is looked to for speed.
Brad's first of all, he's going to open up the whole game for everyone, because he's definitely one of the fastest skaters in the league, and people have to pay attention to that, and it ends up putting some defensemen on their heels, and as a result, the whole ice gets to be spread out a little bit more. You spread the defense out, and it creates holes for everyone else.
Changes aside, a large core remains from recent non-playoff seasons. Was it injury? Or maybe chemistry? Perhaps lack of leadership? Possibly the talent level. Whatever the reason, the players can't look back. The only relevance is to look forward.
It's time to step up and prove my critics wrong and play the way that I'm capable of playing. There's no doubt in my mind I'm going to get back to the level that I established my first 3 years. No doubt at all. I think, but yeah, it's a very important year. Will this make or break? I don't know. But yeah, it's probably the most important year in my career. But there's probably a lot of guys that are in that boat. I think as a hockey club, we have a lot to prove. I think the last 2 years obviously have been awful. And when you don't make the playoffs, when 16 of 21 teams make the playoffs and you don't make it, let's face it, you got something to prove.
Missing the playoffs, there's no excuse at all for it, and the blame lies solely on our shoulders, and it's something that us players, we want to be given the chance to go out there and make up for that. And it's we can't erase the past, but we can certainly do something about the present and the future. So I think the guys are pretty eager and looking forward to getting back at it.
I think it's a pivotal year for the Flyers. To where the organization's going, and to not make the playoffs here as well, I mean, is a disastrous thing. I mean, it seems a little harsh, but it is. I mean, the fans right now are wondering where they're going, and I think that they want to see a winner in this town. And the last 2 years, I'm sure that they're forgiving us, but I don't think they're going to forgive us a third year. So, if any of us want to be around for the next few years, that's another kind of a motivational factor.
The symbols of excellence from the past remain frozen in time. For the 25th season, Flyers fans will pass through the Spectrum doors to witness the thrill, the spectacle, the tradition of Flyers hockey. We remember the Flyers defeating the Soviets back in 1976. Barry Ashby and his legacy, which still lives in the Flyers' Wives Carnival. 2 Stanley Cup championships and 6 playoff final appearances. We remember the 35-game unbeaten streak, a professional record that still stands today. And we recall the courageous performance of the Flyers team in the fall of November 1985, just after the death of Pelle Lindbergh. Flyers hockey means a lot of things to a lot of different people. It is as much a part of the flavor of Philadelphia as the soft pretzel. Finally, we recognize the inspiration. Today, youngsters play hockey in the streets as well as on the rink with hopes and dreams of following in the Flyers' footsteps. The inspiration, who could forget? During World War II, her song inspired an entire nation. Since the 70s, it's moved this city.